Hello, my friends. What I'm about to share with you may not be of any interest to you whatsoever, but I thought I'd put it out there in any case because it's something I've been interested in for many years. I'm not a professional student of comparative religion, but I've had a lot of interest in comparative spirituality and the insights from different traditions. I grew up in India, and India is very diverse culturally in many ways. And I had friends from the Jewish community, from the Christian community, from the Islamic community, from the Zoroastrian community. And I took a lot of interest in the religious experience of different traditions. And one of the things I became interested in later is the confluence of the ideas in Sufi Islam, in Judaism, in Vedanta, in Buddhism, etc. And I felt that if people actually saw the commonalities between these different traditions and insights, they would actually be much more tolerance between these different religious groups, at least the organized groups. It never happened. It's the nature of human beings to always separate themselves for whatever reason. It goes back to our tribal times. But recently, a lot of people have been asking me about the commonalities between what we call Vedic tradition and Judaic tradition, and also some of the commonalities in terminology of spiritual terms. So I thought I'd share that with you today. Vedic tradition, Judaic tradition. Now, historically, there might be certain reasons for these commonalities. And historically, apparently, there were 12 tribes that existed originally that we can call Israeli tribes, named after Jacob, who was also called Israel. And Jacob, as you know, was one of the prophets mentioned in the Old Testament. And we know a lot about Jacob and his dreams, etc. So 12 tribes, but in 1722 BC, the kingdom of Israel, encompassing these 12 tribes, fell into the Assyrian Empire, and its people were exiled. This country event led to the idea of lost tribes, as their subsequent fate became unclear. There are 10 of these so-called lost tribes. There's a literal interpretation of these lost tribes. That is, some people believe that the 10 tribes maintained a distinct identity, but are geographically hidden. There's no historical evidence now for that. Then there's a figurative interpretation, which views the lost tribes metaphorically representing segments of the Jewish people scattered throughout history due to the diaspora and assimilation. Now, also, there is some idea in various traditions that there is Jewish ancestry in India, and certain communities in India, particularly the Banai Menash in Manipur and Mizoram, claim descent from the lost tribes of Menesa. And these claims are based on oral traditions, cultural similarities, and perceived parallels between certain aspects of Hinduism and Judaism. So there are therefore also similarities between Vedic and Hebrew terms, and there is the suggestion that these were exchanged of ideas across ancient trade routes, parallel development of similar concepts in different cultures, and many other reasons. I have no proof that any of this is true, and I think a genetic analysis of these tribes would help. But meanwhile, I thought I'd share with you some of the similarities in Judaic and Vedic tradition and cognition. So there's a realm of reality called the universal domain, the infinite source of all experience. In Judaism, that's referred to as Ein Sof. In Brahman, and in the Vedic tradition, it is referred to as Brahman. We could think of this as the theosphere, and everything that we call the theosphere applies both to the macrocosm and the microcosm. So the ultimate reality is Ein Sof or Brahman, similarities. Then there's a causal body, which is the realm of archetypes, angels, higher beings, symbolic representations of the infinite. And this realm in Judaism is called Atzilut. In Vedic traditions, it's the higher realm of Anandamaya Kosha, or where Atman intersects with Brahman. It's also the theosphere. Theosphere is a good term. Okay, theosphere. Then, of course, in the causal body of the Jewish tradition, which we would call the subtle body, the realm of the intellect, the seeds of personal identity. This is called Bariya in Judaism, and Gyan Maya Kosha. We could call this the noosphere, both at the level of the macrocosm and the microcosm. The subtle body of emotions is Yetzirah in Judaism, Manomaya Kosha. So we can call this the noosphere, macro and micro. Then there's the physical domain, the realm of space-time and causality, which is called Asiya in Judaism, and Anamaya Kosha in Vedanta. We could call this the biosphere in modern terms. The subtle body of the noosphere also has divisions in Judaism. Beria, which includes Chokmah, creative impulse, Bina, nurturing impulse, and Diyat, integrating impulse. And that's very much similar to Gyan Maya Kosha, which includes Mahat, which is intellect and creativity, ego, which is called personal identity or self-image, and then beliefs. Subtle body also contains Yetzirah, Manomaya Kosha, internalized emotions in Judaism like Hasad, Geruva, Tiferet. Hasad refers to giving and receiving. Geruva refers to restraint, forbearance, inertia. Tiferet, that integrates the focused energy. These are very parallel to Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And then Tiferet, which is focused energy, is also Dharma. Externalized emotions like Netzach, reaching out, compassion in Judaism, compared to karmically appropriate action in Vedanta, in Vedic tradition. Hod, empathetic listening, understanding, Shruti in Vedanta. And Yesod, sacred communion, Adam and Eve, love, bonding, cosmic embrace of Shiva Shakti, and the sensual literature which combines spirituality and sensuality in the Kama Sutra. So as you see, there are parallels. Asiya is the physical domain in Judaism. Malchut, the actualization of latent tendencies through behavior and expression. Very similar to Karma Yoga, established in being, perform action. Malchut is synonymous with Shekinah, which is Shakti or Kriya Shakti in Vedanta. Archetypes, Abraham, giving and receiving, Abraham. Abraham came from east of the Euphrates. Ivri was the river and represents the river, giving and receiving. Isaac represents the archetype of Geruva and restraint. And I mentioned some of these before. Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. Parallel concepts. Gilgul HaNafesh is the cyclic reincarnation of the wandering soul, or Tulku in Judaism. It is the wandering jiva in Judaism. Hashgacha, karmic baggage, very similar to Vedanta. Abraham, the patriarch, great father. Brahman, the ultimate reality, the great father of existence. Ram, very similar in both traditions. Ram is also an incarnation of the divine in Hinduism, elevated being in Judaism. Nisayon, the opportunity for transformation in the period of transition, which is the bardos of Hinduism and Buddhism. Ashirim, spiritual wealth, which is ashram. Tamme, spiritual inertia. Tamas, the equivalent in Sanskrit. Ivri, other side of the Euphrates in Hindu, other side of the Indus. And Deya, knowledge in Hebrew. Veda in Vedanta. Shekhina, feminine face of God. Shakti in Sanskrit. Halal, infinite void. Shunyata in Sanskrit. Olamat, parallel worlds. Lokas in Sanskrit. And Ruah, spiritual energy. Prana in Sanskrit. So you see, the concepts are very similar. Some of the words are also very similar. Doesn't necessarily mean that, one of the lost tribes of Israel in India came up with this terminology. Just want to show that when we go deep within, then we have the same insights. The physical realm is the ultimate projection of consciousness appearing as matter. The biosphere includes the biosphere of the planet, but also the biosphere that we call the body. The knowing of all this is the subtle body, the noosphere in modern terms. Both applies to us as individuals, but there's a cosmic noosphere and theosphere, the realm of the divine with angels and archetypes and symbolic representations, which is both at the level of the microcosm and the macrocosm. What is the value of all this? Well, hopefully we tolerate each other better, because the same ideas exist everywhere in Christian theology, in Islamic deeper understanding, particularly of the Sufis, but also in the writings of the Quran. And if we can see that the differences are cultural and sometimes semantic, maybe we will have better tolerance for each other. I think there's room for interfaith dialogue, but there's also room for understanding all these concepts as spiritual experiences rather than spiritual dogma. Let me know what you think, and if this is of any use. Otherwise, I'm just sharing this because I felt like sharing it.